All right, we are about to get started with our watch. So we want to welcome everybody here, and if you're standing out in the fellowship area, go ahead and come on in and grab a seat. So welcome to everybody that's here. Welcome to everybody that is watching online tonight. Tonight, our guest is Rick Travis of California Rifle and Pistol Association. We're going to have a very interesting and informative interview tonight. But before we get started with all that, will you join me as we pray? Heavenly Father, thank you for this day that you've given us and blessed us with, and we thank you for the ability to have guests like this come out tonight that are willing to give some of their time to help educate everybody that is watching so that they could just be more informed about rights for guns and just responsible gun safety and everything that their association advocates. So we pray that you would bless the conversation tonight between Pastor Tim and Rick, and that all that are watching, whether here or online, would just be well educated and informed, and it would reach far and wide to serve that purpose. And we ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we are going to take an offering for those of you that are here. We do rely on the support of those that are willing to partner with Our Watch to be able to continue providing content like this and other things that Our Watch does. You can get more information about everything that Our Watch has been doing and has coming up in the future at ourwatchnow.com. And there's a page on there to donate if you are online and would like to help contribute to the cause. That would be awesome. Either way, we really appreciate your support, all of you, for not only being here and watching, but to help to contribute and support the cause of what we're doing as well. I want to let you know that next week, our guest is going to be Seth Gruber of the Life Training Institute. And so he is a pro-life advocate that actually helps train other organizations to help people engage more to fight for the rights of the unborn. And so if you have not heard of Seth, one good way to find more about him is to go online on YouTube. Rob McCoy of Godspeak Calvary Chapel has done several interviews with him, so that would be a good way to get a bit informed before you come next week. And so that will be next Wednesday at 7 o'clock right here. Also want to let you know, for those of you that are here in the building tonight, make sure you stop by our school choice booth out there. They are taking a pre-petition signature list for those that want to be involved with what school choice has to offer, which is choices for parents of how to use money for their children's education. And so they'll be happy to tell you more about that. If you're watching online, you can look them up online and get more info there as well. Also, the California Rifle and Pistol Association, of who Rick Travis is representing here tonight, they have a booth out there. They are all about education, conservation, and litigation. Okay, I remembered it. I wasn't sure if I was going to remember exactly how to put that. And they have been in California for a long time. They can sign you up for a membership. They are $35. That's all it costs to join and to be a member of this association. I hear that their fees are going to be going up in September, and so now is a good time to stop by, at least get the information to help educate yourself more on what this association is all about. So also want to let you know that if you haven't already, please watch you're already watching. Like and subscribe to the Our Watch channel on YouTube and on Rumble. And as you're watching tonight, would you just make sure that you like the video and share the video? We want these videos to go as far as possible to reach as many people as we can, because we know the content of what we're discussing here is that important, and people need to know so that they can help make a difference. If we want to make a difference in this state and in this nation from a biblical mindset, we need people to have this information. So like and share, please. And of course, as well as all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So enough said by me. We're going to be getting started in just a few moments. We'll have a video here to kick us off and get us started. So sit back and relax and enjoy Our Watch.
This past year, the radical left with their globalist mindset has burned down our cities, forced businesses to close, and tried to silence our churches. They told us to wear a mask and stay home to save lives, and many Christians remain silent. That is no longer an option. The silent majority will be silent no more, and the sleeping giant has been awakened. We are going to use our voice to take back the media, stop the censorship, and very loudly take back the public square. I'm Tim Thompson, and this is Our Watch.
Well, good evening, everybody. So glad to see all of you here tonight on Our Watch, and I want to say hello to everybody that is tuned in online. Glad you are with us tonight. Really excited to talk about the topic tonight. One of the things that I, as an American, love. I love guns, and so we're going to talk about that. And before we get into that, I just want to remind you what we do here on Wednesday nights is we're trying to make sure that we have good, solid information, so that way we understand a couple of things. Number one is what is going on in our culture, and then number two, I like to talk about what the Lord has to say about these things. And so we're trying to make sure that people like us with Judeo-Christian mindsets, a biblical worldview, we know what is going on and how we can get involved, how we can vote, how we can be effective to take back the culture. And one of the ways that we're going to be doing that, we talk about this quite a bit, is we want to flip the school boards in our local area, and we're hoping that everybody that's tuned in online is trying to prepare to do the same thing. We know this, if you get the kids, you get the next generation. You're controlling the culture, and we've been losing the culture war, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've got weak individuals, and in some cases just flat out evil individuals on the school boards. And so I wanted to just share something with you before we bring out our guest, just some information about what happened yesterday at the Temecula Valley Unified School District School Board meeting. I went and attended, grabbed a couple of videos. The first video you'll see is Steve Lohner is one of the school board members, and his idea in this video is he's trying to propose that the school board would put on the agenda an item to discuss whether or not the kids are going to go back to school without masks. So take a look.
Yeah, I just got to say, I am so very disappointed that parents still feel the need, because they have to come in here and literally beg us to help them move the needle when it comes to the mask mandate in the fall for students in this district. All districts, really. I can tell you that having 4 students in this district, without hesitation, I am not happy about a mask mandate in the fall. I think at least, look, I'm not a I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert in that field, but what I am is a first responder that at least anecdotally can tell you that what I'm seeing on paper and what I'm seeing in the field, and now what I'm seeing in Disneyland and Target and Costco and you name it, is not what's being reflected in our schools. Good for me, but not for thee, right? And I just feel like, man, I was of the assumption, but I was wrong. But I feel like we have an opportunity here, whether you like it or not, to be the first school district, as far as I know, in Riverside County that says, you know what, parents, we agree with you. And more than anything, yeah, we'd like to speak out for you. We'd like to represent you. I can't speak on behalf of the entire board, but I will tell you that I'd like to move to put on the next, in the next meeting, an agenda for us to have a discussion about this, for how we decide collectively as a board, so we can each individually air our thoughts, feelings, whatever you want to call it, about how we should move forward in the fall and what our voice is going to be for this district when it comes to the California Department of Public Health, when it comes to CalOSHA, when it comes to legislature. And I'm not just telling you to I'm not putting this on your seat. I'm a father, but at this moment in time, more importantly, I'm a board member for this district. And I've already started taking meetings with local officials, but more importantly with state legislators, with state senators, because I'm telling them I'm not happy.
That's Steve Lohner. And if you didn't pick up on all of that, I know it was hard to hear because we weren't there necessarily to film, but I heard what he started talking about. I'm like, I got to capture this. So what he's proposing is that the school board members put on the agenda, hey, next board meeting, let's bring this up, let's talk about it, and let's represent the people. I think we should be a voice for the people. Isn't that what we elected officials for? To represent us? So he's saying, I think we should do what we're supposed to do. Let's have this discussion, and let's take a collective voice, and let's go to the state, and let's go and tell them what we as a board want for our kids. We don't want our kids going back without masks. He's saying, hey, I'm not a medical professional necessarily, but I'm a first responder. The guy's a fireman. And he's saying, what I'm hearing isn't lining up with reality. And so I think we needed to have the discussion. Now, one thing you have to know, well, two things you have to know. Number one, the superintendent for Temecula, in between these videos, told all the parents that were there, here's what you all need to do. You need to go to the state, and you need to tell the state how you feel. You know, you're coming to us and you're telling us how you feel. You need to go tell the state that, and use your voice. Let your voice be heard, okay? So he says, I want to have this on the agenda. You have to have 3 board members agree. If one board member proposes that something gets put on the agenda, 2 others have to agree. So here's what happened once he proposed it. He and Steve, what's the other one? Steve Lohner, and then Steve Schwartz, thank you. So those 2 guys said, yeah, so Steve Lohner said, hey, I propose we put this on the agenda. Steve Schwartz said, I'll second that. Here's what happened.
You don't have to wait to go forward on this?
So I don't know if you could see that, but they're shaking their head no. They're like, no. The other 3 were like, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to make a third to make sure we get this on the agenda. And of course, Steve Lohner was lit up after that. He was very upset. I want to show you one last video, and then I want to tell you one more thing before we bring our guest out.
I guess where my concern is, look, I understand we're trying to slow roll this so that we're not backed into a corner. I think we can all agree that with a vaccination rate in this county of just over 40%, 7 months later, and virtually everyone in every social setting outside of these 4 walls are not wearing masks, we would have broad community support on this. Look, there's standing up and doing the right thing for optics, and there's standing up and doing the right thing just to do the right thing, right? Like, I'm not saying that whether you agree with it or not, all we need to do is talk about it. You know, like, all we get right now is people saying that they're upset, and we can't do anything about that. But maybe we can. You know, maybe it starts with one collective voice, this board.
You know, my worry is that we're going to give our personal opinions and publicly discuss it, and then it is going to give people hope that we have a place to make this decision. That is my concern. I don't want to give my opinion personally and then give someone hope that I can keep their child from wearing a mask in school. I don't believe that the state cares about my personal opinion. I don't think the state cares about our board's opinion.
Did you catch what she said there at the end? I know it's hard to hear, but what she said was, I don't want to share my opinion publicly. I don't want to tell people what I think about this because the state's not going to care what I have to say anyways. They're telling us that we need to go tell them what our voice is, and they're saying that's the effective way to do it, and then the board says, well, I don't want to do that because they don't care what we have to say anyways. Well, do you see the hypocrisy in that? I mean, this is total hypocrisy, and they're all acting like there's nothing they can do about it. There's absolutely something they can do about it. They can vote 5-0 to put the kids back into school without masks. That's what they can do. And just like Steve Lohner said, they can take that collective voice and go tell the state, We have all decided that is not good for our community, period. The parents don't want it. We represent the parents. The parents said no. The vast majority of parents said this is ridiculous. But those three are not willing to even have the discussion, which leads us to our draft pick for the night. This is where we're at with the Temecula Valley Unified School District. We've got 3 open seats. Just so happens to be those 3 open seats that were on the school board that didn't want to do anything for our kids to get them back into school. So Adam Skumowitz, the guy that was masked up the entire time through the meeting like a weirdo, his seat is up in 2022. He's registered as a no party preference. Does that guy stay or does he go? Guy's got to go. Now, who are we going to get to replace him? We don't know yet. We need somebody that's in that district to run for that spot. If you know anybody that can run and replace that guy, we got to find somebody very, very quickly. Here's the next one, Barbara Broche. Barbara Broche, you couldn't see her. She was kind of behind the podium. But Barbara Broche, her seat is up in 2022. Again, did not even want to have the discussion. She's the one that says that her voice didn't even matter to the state anyways. Does she stay or does she go? She's got to go. That woman's got to go. So who are we going to find to replace her? Again, we don't have anybody that's stepped up to the plate yet. If you know anybody in Temecula and they are in that area of that school district, we'd love to hear from them. Finally, Sandy Hinkson. Let me tell you something about Sandy Hinkson last night. She said, and I didn't put the video, I don't have the video of this, but she said, I think we all, my wife's cracking up right now. This was so pathetic. You're not going to believe this. She said, we need to celebrate. We've done something great here at the district. And then she went on to say that they lowered the standards for graduation and pushed kids through graduation. So we had a lot of kids graduate. Awesome. So you lowered the standards to just push kids through. I thought we're supposed to teach kids and prepare them educationally to move on. But no, we lowered the standards so that way we could get more kids graduated. Let's all celebrate. Does that woman stay or does she go? Woman's got to go. All right. So again, we have nobody who's stepped up to the plate. So if you know strong Bible-believing Christians that are going to step up to the plate and they want to run, we want to help get behind them. We want to help make sure that they have a platform where people can hear who they are and we can get them elected and get these morons out. All right. And then one final thing, we are looking for people to help do research. A lot of research needs to be done on several of the school board members. We want to make sure that we're looking into how they voted, stuff like that. If you want to help us out, Desiree will be out there afterwards and we'd love to talk to you. And then also, if you're watching this online and you want to find out how you can start doing this in your area, just get with us, info@ourwatchnow.com. We'd love to talk to you, and we'll send you all these files, and you can do the same type of thing in your area. So that being said, let's go ahead and get our guest out here tonight. Our guest this evening recently had a big Second Amendment win in the courts and is going to discuss his newest court challenges against the relentless attacks on our constitutional, I would say our God-given right, constitutionally protected right to bear arms by emboldened Democrat lawmakers at both the state and national level. Our guest this evening is going to explain to the new and future gun owners their legal rights, responsibilities regarding their gun rights, the Second Amendment rights, and much more. Please welcome our guest this evening, California Rifle and Pistol Association's Rick Travis. Rick,
good to see you.
Glad to have you here tonight. Aren't you glad you're not on a school board?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be tearing you up right now. Well, we wouldn't be tearing you up.
You wouldn't be tearing me up.
You would be helping us tear up everyone else. Glad to have you here tonight. Let's just start off by saying, number one, what is the California Rifle and Pistol Association? And also, number two, you were a pastor at one point. So
youth pastor.
So two kind of different things.
Yes.
So talk about those two things.
Sure. So the California Rifle Pistol Association just celebrated its 146th anniversary. Makes us the oldest nonprofit and oldest civil rights organization not just in California, but on the West Coast. The only 2A organization older than us by about 3 years is the National Rifle Association. And we actually gave the first national competition because the NRA at that time was just in New York. And so we had only been around about a month and a half when we sent our first competitive team, and we actually beat the NRA the first year. Didn't happen again for several years, but the first year we did. But I always like to tell people a little bit about why we came about and what we've been doing during that time period. We came about because California didn't have a lot of people in the Civil War, but the people we sent didn't do so well. A lot of people don't understand California history, and the history of the state at the time was we had a democratically controlled Senate, Assembly, and governorship, and people weren't allowed to have guns, and they weren't allowed to go hunting, and they weren't allowed to do much of anything. And so people were fed by market hunters and things like that. So obviously, if you don't know how to use a gun, don't know how to ride a horse, you're not going to fare too well in the Civil War. So about 10 years after that, ironically, the mayor of Oakland, the mayor of San Francisco, along with the head of the California National Guard at the time, said we need to change this. And so they formed what that time was called the California Rifle Association. And they set up their first range. Ironically, this would never happen today, but they did it in Golden Gate Park. And can you imagine? And about 6 months after they opened up, they had a shoot where the youngest person was 6 years of age, the oldest was 91. Men, women, and people of all nationalities, the Chinese immigrants that were here, obviously the Mexicans that had been living here in California, everybody took part on the same line. So the first thing we were there is about be safe, and so we taught firearm safety and skills and marksmanship. And then after World War I, people were, ironically, Tim, being able to buy a pistol called a 1911 for about $1.25 and have it delivered to their home. So pistol shooting became really big. And so that's when we added the name Rifle and Pistol Association to us. And then we've also been fighting all the anti-Second Amendment legislation that's took place for almost 60 years straight. Personally, my job is to oversee part of the Second Amendment defense and all the hunting and conservation here in the state of California.
Awesome.
And as far as the youth pastor part, I happen to be at a church with my wife, who's a physical therapist, and as I told Pastor Tim earlier, I had worked up at Forest Home, which is a Christian camp out here in the Inland Empire, and they didn't have a junior high youth pastor, and they were looking for someone to fill in. So I said, sure, I'd fill in for a couple of months. That ended up being a little over a year and a half. And then they had a new pastor, and he wanted to bring his old youth pastor on, and I was good with that. So, yeah.
So when you were a youth pastor, did you have guns?
Yeah, we could. I actually took the kids out shooting.
All right.
Yeah, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and I did that for 25 years as a scoutmaster as well. So.
Awesome. Awesome. So there's a recent win you had. Tell us about the win.
So the win is a little deceptive. It came in two parts. So the first was a case called Rupp v. Becerra, and it was over the misnamed, which would be the automatic rifle, or as some people call it, an assault rifle. And I want to, if we could, talk a little bit about that. So assault rifles have never been allowed in California because the definition by the United States military and Department of Defense, assault rifle has 3 selector switches, which is single, and then a multi, sometimes it's 3 or semi-automatic fire, and then fully auto. That's the definition of an assault rifle. So when the politicians call an AR-15, for example, an assault rifle, they're showing their idiocy because what that actually stands for is Armalite Rifle Model 15. That's what it stands for. So, and that's why we're there to look at the legislation, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, because there's a lot of little games that they play in that.
So, I mean, I'm of the mindset that every rifle is an assault rifle. I mean, isn't that what you do? You assault things with it.
Well, it depends.
A hammer's an assault weapon.
Right.
I mean, you look at it, what are weapons for? They're for assaulting. No matter what type of weapon it is. It could be a car. It could be a baseball bat. I mean, that's what you do with weapons. And, as a pastor, some people have asked, like, well, do you even think it's right for a pastor to have guns? Right?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. People ask me, like, hey, what about that? Pastors have a gun. I have lots of guns. I'm a gun guy. It's a hobby of mine. I enjoy it. And my kids have enjoyed it with me. It's something that my kids have grown up doing. And And of course, it's not all for hunting for me. For me, part of it is protection. We got a wife. I had a daughter growing up. And for me, it was an important part of my ability to protect my family, and still is. And it's something that I'm very, very passionate about. And, a lot of people ask me, about what's going on in the government, and they ask me, do we ever go to war against the government? And I tell people this, listen, we're in a spiritual battle. It's a spiritual battle fought with spiritual weapons. We need to be on our knees in prayer. We need to be, going through Ephesians and talking about what we put on as Christians. That's the spiritual side of it, and that's where we're at. We've got wicked people in leadership. We need to be praying against that. But when it comes to, for me personally as a pastor, when it comes to my right to bear arms, that is definitely tied to my ability to protect my family from intruders. I would never allow somebody to come in and cause harm to my wife, my daughter, my son. Just wouldn't happen. And it's important for us to know that that's not against God's word. As you said, David had a sling, and he had 5 smooth stones.
Right.
And a lot of people don't know what those 5 stones were for. One of them was for a giant that we know as Goliath, but he had 4 brothers. He was ready to go kill them all. And that's biblical. God didn't,
Right.
chastise David for that. And we have to understand it is an important thing for a man and a woman to protect their home. And I think every man and woman in America should make sure we hang on to that right. And there's ways that we can do that. We'll talk about that in a moment. But let me ask you, besides the ways that
I would like to go back to something if I could.
Oh, go ahead, please.
So I want everybody to understand the Second Amendment's been maligned by our politicians, by the media, without a doubt. And unfortunately, a lot of us have stayed silent on it. So I like to use this example. I take family, friends, people to Washington, D.C. It's kind of my every 3 or 4 year pilgrimage. And I got to take my family about 4 years ago, just after my sons had got married, to my beautiful daughter-in-laws that I just call daughters. So if you ever meet me out and I say, this is my daughter, that's my daughter, we don't use in-laws in our family because I accept that responsibility to look after them. But when we went back there, my oldest son was like, hey, Dad, I think you got this wrong, because they have many copies of the Constitution. They alternate them so they don't all fade out. And so this one, what we read as the Second Amendment, was actually the 9th. It was one of the earlier drafts. And what happened is, if you understand, George Mason, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams all said, no, we need to move it to the 2nd. So those words shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment is your bookend to your First Amendment rights. They realized that if you lost the right to bear arms, you would lose every right that you're guaranteed in the First Amendment. And what happens is most people don't realize that's part of what our organization fights for, and other like organizations, is it's not just for your right to keep arms, it's for your right to do what we're doing here. It's the right for you to be able to redress government. All of that is encapsulated in the first, and we lose that if we lose the second. And if you have any doubts, I always challenge people to 2 things. One, look at all the countries that don't have a First Amendment type right system. They don't have a second. But more importantly, go to countries like Romania, who fought to get a Second Amendment, fought the EU to put that in place since they got away from the communist bloc. And I think that's something that we have to realize, because if we don't turn things around pretty quick, we're going to end up like Romania did back in the 20s and 30s of a century ago.
Yeah. We had a woman come to the church a few years back. She's a Holocaust survivor, and she talked about her time in Dachau. And it was, for me, it was a really incredible experience, because I got to go to her home and interview her before she came here, and her story was quite remarkable. But one of the things she told us was that they came first and took their guns. And once they took their guns, that was it. It was done and it was over for them. And she told us point blank, she said, we have to study history. We have to know history, and here's the thing, Edmund Burke says, if you don't study history, you're doomed to repeat it. And that's just a cold hard fact. And we have to know that. People want to protect their guns. And they want to protect that Second Amendment right. How do they do that?
So there's a few things you have to realize. Number one, you got to know who your enemies are. I know a lot of people have heard these 2 names, but I'm going to break it down kind of what they're doing here in California. So both Bloomberg and Soros are formidable foes of the Second Amendment. George Soros now for the third time in 2 years has held a conference down in Carlsbad. He's dedicated almost $30 million to just unseating sheriffs here in the state of California. And a lot of you would be like, well, is that really that critical? You know, because you guys have a great sheriff, and Chad Bianco, a personal friend of mine, and I know yours as well. Yeah, it's really critical because we have 42 sheriffs that are issuing the bulk load of concealed carry permits and have fought for your rights. They worked with me. One of the things I got to do was sit on a committee for President Trump to make sure that your ranges and your gun stores stayed open as part of the critical infrastructure. And so I served on that committee for 3 years to try to make sure that what happened, and we didn't get them all closed down. The sheriffs were the ones that stood with me and stopped the California Department of Justice from shutting down stores both in Northern and Central California, worked with me to help educate Sheriff Villanueva, who now issues CCWs in LA County, and that was a recent victory for us. But that takes a lot of dedication, and it takes 3 things. It takes people like you, not just sitting back at home if you're watching this or out here in the audience, that actually do more than just talk about it. Because you got to realize we operate on a budget right around $1 million. And this is just one subject matter that we're fighting Soros. So he already outnumbers us 30-1. And when you hear our track record that we defeat almost 91% of all the legislation thrown at you annually, that's a heck of a good batting average when you look at it. And that's why when we look at people and say, you know, $35 for some of you, that's like less than 1 Starbucks a month that you're giving up for your Second Amendment rights for you, as well as for your children and grandchildren. And that's not the only thing we do. We make sure that Christian camps, Boy Scout programs, JOTC programs, and if I have a chance, I'll talk about some of those a little bit later, but you have to realize they're all under attack. And so we cover all that, and the 1.2 million new gun owners, trying to make sure they have the ability to get trained. And a lot of those people are very agitated, upset. They weren't normally on our side of the line, but they found during COVID that they were being lied to, and that they had to take their own personal security into their own hands. And so that's part of the reason we have a shortage of firearms, because that happened nationwide.
Right, and you know, it's not just the sheriffs that George Soros is after, it's also the district attorneys.
And judges.
And the judges. And you take a look at what happened in Los Angeles County. Those of you who don't know, I would do a little research on George Gascon, but he is the DA there. About 1 hour after that man was sworn in, he issued several directives, and it fundamentally changed the way the district attorney's office operates there. And essentially what it's doing is it's taking criminals and just putting them right back out on the streets. And so that's why it's so imperative that the sheriff out there would start issuing the CCWs, because we need to be able to protect ourselves. I can't imagine living in Los Angeles right now with George Gascon as the DA. You know, we here that are here live right now that live here in Riverside County, I mean, we're blessed to have Sheriff Chad Bianco, DA Mike Hestron, but many of you that are watching online, you're some of you are from LA, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's, you know, it's a scary thing to know that these people are being put right back out on the streets. And you know, the laws that are out there that are supposedly, you know, we look at like the 3 strikes law, and you have what's called sentence enhancements. Well, the sentence enhancements are thrown away, and you know, the sentence enhancements like guns. Like, so let's say you rob a store, or you rob a store with a gun. Well, that gun is a sentence enhancement. Well, George Gascon said, we're not going to do that. So there's no like additional fear for people out robbing people to use a gun. Well, I'll just use a gun anyways. They're not going to charge me with that. They're emboldening the wicked people. And they're wanting to strip away our rights to defend ourselves from the wicked people. And it's something we can't allow to happen.
Well, one of the best examples of what you're talking about is what's called the APP system. Has anybody ever heard of the APP system here? So what that is the Armed Prohibitive Person System. It is where the California Department of Justice knows where felons that are not allowed to have firearms actually have firearms, and knows their age, where they live, where they keep the firearms. Okay, so everybody got that? Like, the state government knows where the bad guy that wants to do you harm lives with an illegal firearm. We have 20,000 people on that list. DOJ did less than 6 arrests in the last calendar year. But they've went after law-abiding citizens who own firearms to try to put them in jail. Now, that should be a wake-up call to any of you out there, both here in the audience and online. That's what we're up against in this state. We won't go after the people that we're paid to go after, but we'll go after the law-abiding. And some of the legislation this year was actually suggesting that if you didn't have a firearm correctly placed in a safe, you could go to jail for 25 years, while the rapist that tried to go after your daughter was going to be early released in 9 months. That's part
I
of
would
what we're up
early
against.
release him to the afterlife is what I would do.
Amen.
So what do they do, though? I mean, I hear what you're saying, but there's got to be some steps that everybody here and everybody tuned in online can take. What can we do to help secure our gun rights and keep a safe environment?
First one, start talking to people. I mean, we can't live in a closet and not talk to people. You know, I was blessed to grow up with a grandfather who taught me two things beyond the firearm safety. One was to share how much fun it was, you know, and the other one, and hope I don't offend anybody, but I do provide the food for my family by going out and hunting what God provides out in the wilderness.
Do we have any
bringing it home.
vegans here tonight? Don't cry. It's okay.
Actually, if we have vegans here, one of the things I like to share with people is if you're doing it because your doctors told you you have to do it, I understand that. But if you're doing it because you think you're protecting Bambi or any other critter here in California, you actually aren't. In order for a person to have an organic vegan farm in the state of California, they have to have what are called depredation permits, which means any wild animal on that farm has to be terminated in order to keep that status. Just for record, 25 times the deer alone are killed by vegan farmers than by hunters. So next time you're at Mother's Market or Whole Foods, you might want to tell the people there, but yeah.
And you guys that have been coming a while, you know, I'm just teasing about the vegan thing. I just think they should eat steaks, that's all.
Well, I get my vegetables by eating the animals that eat my vegetables.
Vegetables are the food that my food eats.
Right.
What bills, so there's a lot of bills coming down. What are some of the ones that we should be looking for, and what can we do to help try to stop them?
So as you had asked in the last question, I'm going to explain this. We need you to start talking to your neighbors. If you do hunt, share the food with them so you don't think that deer meat's that different from beef, because it's not, except it's better for you, so in that way it is good. But one of the bills, and I talked to Pastor Tim before the show, and it's really critical for all of you to understand, this is probably the easiest bill to talk to anybody, whether they love firearms or hate them. And here's why. It deals with illegal taxation. And most Californians, no matter where they're at politically, don't like money being illegally taken from their wallet. So what I tell people all the time to realize there's a bill called Assembly Bill 1223. It's by Mark Levine, who's up out of Marin County, north of the Bay. Absolute evil man. I have no problem saying that over and over again. Hates the Second Amendment, finds all sorts of creative ways to go after it. So the first thing you have to realize is people say, well, what do gun owners do to pay for any of this stuff that they do? And many of you do not realize, but in the 1930s, people like us voted to self-impose a 20% tax on everything we bought, from camouflage to tents to firearms to ammunition. And that is called the Pittman-Robertson bill. And it's designed to do three things in each state where that money is collected. Build new ranges. How many of you have seen a new range built by the state of California recently? Oh, no? Okay. It's supposed to pay for training for families, for single moms, things like that. Even back then, they were thinking that far ahead. Have you heard of that? No? Wow. Amazing. The third thing it's supposed to do is to help preserve your Second Amendment rights. Have you heard of that? Okay, on average, it fluctuates between $70 and $90 million annually that our governors have been sending back to the general fund of the federal government. That's your money that you paid for, and not one dime went. That'd be the equivalent of a bond happening here that you paid for, and the two of us decide we're going to go build a home in Cabo San Lucas with it, and not repair the school, repair the roads. How long would we be in office? But they've been doing this for 30 years in California. Any of you that have ever went to Arizona and went on that amazing range in northern Arizona, that was built with Arizona's Pittman-Robertson dollars. Arizona gets 1/19 of what we do, which means we could have owned 19 of those ranges every year for the past 30 years, just saying. So 1223, what it does is, depending where you live, it raises that tax between 31% and 39% on every piece of ammunition, every firearm, firearm transfers, everything across the board. It's specifically designed to remove people from the gun-owning business. That's what they want to do. But here's why it's so dangerous. How Sacramento used to work before COVID, which was very corrupt, and how it works today is even worse. Before, Tim, I would go up to see, a Democratic assemblyman, because there's some that are supportive of the Second Amendment, and I'd make an appointment. It's a polite thing to do. Get there, and we'd be told, oh, they're busy. They're not here. Well, I would go sit in the hallway, and then miraculously, 20 minutes later, they would walk out the door into the hallway, trying to avoid the people that were in their office, and I'd be like, hi, and we would talk on the way down to the Senate chambers or Assembly chambers. Since COVID, we've been locked out of the building because obviously any of us standing up for your rights, we're the carriers of everything COVID. But the homeless people who live in the Capitol Mall have been allowed in the building. Even to this day, we have to be walked with 2 guards, go through all these systems, while the homeless still just walk in. And they deny some things. So on 1223, what they did was the money was to go to a victim's rights thing. Governor Newsom prepaid it 5 years out, which means the bill dies by law. They decided, after it went through all the committees where no testimony was given, to create a new bureaucracy that is yet to be defined. And so for the past 5 weeks, under an emergency clause, which there's no emergency, and everyone's pointed that out, we've been fighting by having people like you call. Don't call Sacramento, call the local offices. And go to the local offices, because when you tie those local offices up, the people in Sacramento can't get anything done, because that's their last stand right now. And so that's one of the things you guys can do, is just go up there and say, hey, I want to talk to you, and I want to tell you why I don't want to be taxed. But that's not the only illegal tax they're doing. There's about 14 of them across the board that they're trying to come after us with. This is just the one that focuses on the Second Amendment.
All politics is local.
Yep.
It's local. And this is why, we're trying to work with the school boards right here. And that's why we're asking everybody online to do it there in your area. You're saying get to these local offices. It's all local. And if we'll all go and let our voice be heard, regardless of what that school board member from Temecula said, you're absolutely right. If we can flood them with our voice, voices matter.
Yeah, they do. Let me give you another bill that it's a positive bill that we are working on. It's a bill that I'm still fighting for. And let me tell you a little bit about the evolution so you can see some of the work we do. One of the things I said before is I defend your right to go out and hunt and work with youth programs. So other than this last year, because they didn't allow us to meet, I meet with all the different chiefs of the Fish and Wildlife and Fish and Game departments across the country. So 2 years ago in Lake Tahoe, I'm staying with the chief from Georgia, and he told me about a law called Taylor's Law. And Taylor's Law obviously hits me as a hunter and a Second Amendment enthusiast, but it hits me more as a youth leader and former youth pastor and scoutmaster, in that it dealt with kids who are terminally ill. And what happened in the state of Georgia was they realized that they have an enormous amount of kids who either want to go hunting, fishing, or competitive shooting. But all of those have seasons. And some of you may be like, competitive shooting? Yeah, competitive shooting has a season. Try to go on a shotgun range during the middle of the competitive shotgun. You're not going to find an open spot. And so what they did was they created a law that said, we will find workarounds to take these kids. They have about a 6-week window in that last year that they can usually go do something like that. In the seasons, we just won't look at those. We'll find a workaround. It got adopted in 14 other states. So I came back to California, and I had a couple questions in my mind, a little bit jaded, of like, well, how many kids would this impact in California? Because obviously Georgia, hunting is a normal thing, fishing is a normal thing. Here, a lot of our kids have been removed from the outdoors through the school system. So came and found out, so I started at Children's Hospital, Orange County, and found out we lose about 300 kids a quarter, that was one of their Make-A-Wish items that were never be able to be delivered. That was a little humbling. Went out here to Riverside, Children's Hospital, LA, and so finally the good people at Rahagas, Pat and Cindy, to be largely commended for this, we decided to do a test case on a Thursday before we wrote this bill to see what would happen. And so we were hoping for a dozen kids. We had 91 kids show up to that first event.
Awesome.
So during that, one of the dads, his son died a couple of weeks later and said, we've got to get this bill passed. So we wrote the bill, Tim. We put it with the Gold Star mothers because we knew if we put our name on it, it would get shot down before it ever got out the gate. So we call it Trojan horse legislation.
Got to be shrewd.
Yeah. So we do that. And we had 3 kids, 2 young ladies. One was 12, one was 14. And then we had a 15-year-old boy who knew they would never see the light of day on this bill, but they wanted to go testify. So the Gold Star mothers who have lost family members were willing to take these kids up to Sacramento. They were there to testify, and they were blocked by our state senate and governor from testifying. That's how cold. And one of the arguments I made in the hallway was, you got to be kidding me. This is their dying wish, and you're denying their basic rights as Americans. And they were like, yep, and walked down the hall and denied it to them. So it's now a 2-year bill. We pulled it back so it didn't get defeated, and we're coming back at it again this next year, hoping that we can get those kids, because that will make it awkward for them in front of the cameras. But that's what we've been fighting against.
And that's just, yeah, that saddens me.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you hunt, especially those of you that have kids. I want to encourage you to take them hunting. Some of my best memories with my kids was hunting. In fact, I'm going to embarrass him tonight, but I had the birds and the bees talk with my son when we were out hunting. And it was just, as a father and a son, it was an awesome moment. Took him out. We were dove hunting out in Island, and the moon was out, and I could see my son's face, and we're talking, and I could see he wasn't getting it. And I said, well, son, I'm just going to tell you. So I laid it out for him, and I saw his eyes just get huge. And he's sitting there, he's got a shotgun, and his eyes are getting huge. And I said, do you understand now, son? He goes, do you have any questions? You can talk to me if you do, right? All right, good talk, son. And it was like father-son out shooting stuff. It was just a good, manly time. And then I took my daughter out, and that was a good fatherly time with his daughter, and it really is a beautiful thing. And it's something that families should be able to do, and yet we're seeing dying wishes being denied.
Right.
Talk about things being denied. One of the things that's been denied quite a bit here in the state of California is the right to concealed carry.
Yep.
Thankfully, we see in Riverside County, we do get issued our CCWs, and Sheriff Chad Bianco ran on that. It was one of his things that he ran on, is that he would make sure that people were able to get those, and so I know lots of people who have gotten them. But talk to us about that here in the state of California, concealed carry. Where are we at with that, and where do you think it might be headed?
So CRPA started in 2013 a campaign. It started in Orange County and San Diego County. San Diego was the Peruta case, for those of you that may remember. Peruta was a news person who wanted to CCW. Sheriff Gore, which I have a lot of issues with, said no, you couldn't have it. And so we took him to court. At the same time, we took the new sheriff in Orange County, Sandra Hutchins, to court. And then Sandra Hutchins and I started to meet. And there were some things that happened in Orange County were distinctly different. And at the time, I didn't see how God was necessarily going to work with that, but did. And that was in Orange County, Sandra Hutchinson came out of the LA County Sheriff System. So she was fairly raised and trained not to be pro CCWs. And so they had about 800 CCWs in Orange County. And we started this discussion off, and she said, well, one thing, if I'm going to do this, I got to make sure that the people aren't felons and they really need them. And so I actually started an argument with her. And when I say argument, I don't mean like we're yelling at each other. It's like an actual scholastic type argument. And one of the things I said to her, I said, well, if you're a hunter with a firearm, you can't be a felon. And there's no hunting land really to speak of anymore in Orange County, which means your Orange County citizens are going to places. And I myself have had PETA try to wipe out my truck and things. And I said, that's life-threatening. And she was like, okay. So she talked to her undersheriff at the time. They started issuing. It got out to about 2,500. No bad things happened. No shootouts at the OK Corral. And so then she opened it up, and she passed away, unfortunately, this last year from fighting her fight against breast cancer. She beat it the first 3 times, didn't the last time. But she, when she left office, had 18,000 CCWs. Her undersheriff became sheriff, so he is the sheriff now there, yeah. And he is brought up to 26,000. I bring that up because we have some sheriffs like Margaret Mims in Fresno, who is retiring this year, and she's just shy of the 36,000 mark. And those are all good things, but this comes at a time that law enforcement is being defunded by 20 to 30%, even in conservative counties. And it also comes at a time that a lot of us don't realize. There's a dynamic change that's happened this past year with this 1.2 million new gun owners. Traditionally, those of us have owned firearms, so either like you and me, we've collected them, maybe even joke like I do, that they're like golf clubs. This one's for this purpose, this one's for that purpose.
Right.
But we, generally speaking, weren't the ones that just get a gun and then want to go get the training and go get a CCW. That wasn't the way the vast percentage of us, about 5% do that. Of our new gun owners, it's about 26% that want them. That's a dynamic change that we have noticed. And they're really upset because they feel lied to, so they're really focused. So let's just take, whether we take Riverside County, San Bernardino, or Riverside or Orange County. In Orange County, at 26,000, that's 13,000 renewals a year. They have 29,000 new applicants, and their budget's being cut 20%. So what is the sheriff doing? He has two choices. He has to figure out what programs he's going to cut to keep that program going, or he has to charge us more. Not one sheriff in California has opted to charge you, the citizen, more for your CCW, which is why I'm saying all of us have to be in the trenches fighting to keep our sheriffs in office.
Right.
Because that's one of the reasons they want to remove them. Because, the sheriffs are making the case. My son's in law enforcement. He's a SWAT officer in Orange County, and he will tell you his city's got about 200,000 people, and on a Friday night, there's 8 to 10 patrol officers on the street for that city. And if we have one robbery and one DUI, that means 2 people that are still roving the streets. If you get into a gunfight and a home invasion, they're 25 minutes out. 25 minutes is an eternity in a gunfight. Most of those are resolved in about 90 seconds. So just think about that, and that's the reason I think a lot of these new people, Tim, that have come over to our side buying these firearms are so concerned about getting CCWs because they realize the delayed times, law enforcement pulling back, cuts, that they want them. And so it's one of the things I keep talking to citizens like yourselves about is, and the joke I was making with the gentleman off here to my right before is how I used to relieve myself of the stress because my job's stressful. It's constantly going up against the wall. And people are like, how do you do it? Well, archery was my de-stressor. I'd pray and go shoot some arrows. Then Katniss Everdeen and the Hunger Games came out, and every woman and their daughter was at the range, and I lost that opportunity. We're kind of there now with the new gun owners. So the one thing I do ask you is this a chance to share your knowledge because they're hungry to know because they're very upset with how much they've been lied to.
Yeah. For sure. Talk about training, if you would.
Sure.
What do you guys do? What do you recommend for everybody? A lot of people are buying guns. They're brand new gun owners, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to owning a gun. There's a lot to the safety and handling, and they can't just get a gun and think, oh, okay, well, I've seen that on the movies, so I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that CRPA is really pushing. That's a great segue, Tim. Thank you. If you think about it, most of us have went to a range, indoor, outdoor, and you normally fire with your pistol at 7, 14, or 21 feet. And so you're used to doing that. The problem is most home invasions happen somewhere between 1 and 5:15 in the morning is the average, even here in the state of California. It's normally 4 people. They're normally not carrying the California low capacity magazine. They're carrying something much more substantial. So there you get up with your firearm with the limited capacity if you didn't take advantage of Freedom Week where you could get things, which you're welcome. We did that for you. But one of the things that I talk to people about is you're getting up, you're at a disadvantage, you're disoriented, you know something's going on in your house, and your brain defaults to what you've seen. So what is your number one firearms instruction that most of you have had? And most people say, oh, the military, police work. No, it's television. And what do you see in TV? Something goes crash in the night, husband or wife grabs whatever they're going to grab, and they go in pursuit. That is the dumbest thing to ever do. Why would you ever give up the tactical advantage of your bedroom? unless you're trying to go get your kids, I get that, to bring them back. But otherwise, you should stay there because you have this nice funnel called a door. The bad person has to come through that door to get to you. But that's not the way we train. And so one of the things that we're trying to work with is virtual reality trainers and other ways to allow you to actually train and build up that muscle memory and that knowledge base to go against what you've had in television. So for a lot of the new gun owners, we're trying to direct them towards that. We have some incredible technology that's breaking loose this summer that CRPA is going to be pushing throughout ranges and different stores and training centers. But one of the other things we're trying to push too is to make sure that you realize just because you go to the range once, no matter who you go with to learn, all of us have been doing this a long time. You got to constantly train. It's like anything else. If you stop cooking and then you watch somebody go back in the kitchen 5 years later, they don't know what they're doing. That's a perishable skill. So it is with firearms. And so one of the advantages to virtual training, Tim, is that with the ammunition shortage right now, you can actually, with these virtual trainers, get the kick, have it convert to whatever type of firearm you're using, and so visually everything, it works for you.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. How did people get connected with that? Oh, yeah,
that'd be easy. It'd be contact@crpa.org, and then we'll find out where you are locally and match you to the right people. And if you are a trainer, same thing, talk to us and we'll help you get it hooked up.
We've got several trainers that go to church here, yeah. So they should get with you. Yeah. What do we need to know about marijuana and firearms?
Is that my segue?
Yeah.
So if you go to our site, you will see that we have a section on marijuana and firearms. So if you're currently using, and you go to fill out your form 4473, it asks, are you currently using marijuana or any other illegal drug? If you check the box yes, you cannot buy a firearm, because that's federal law. Does everybody understand that? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, that's thank you. The ATF form 4473 you got to fill out with the feds. But that's interesting, because people are like, so why are you so myopically focused on that one little thing? Because there's several questions, as you know, on that form. Here's why. We were challenging Kamala Harris's nomination to the vice presidency because Kamala Harris admitted to buying her firearm at the same time she was smoking marijuana every weekend at the college and also as a district attorney, which, number one, that's immediate grounds for disbarment here in California as a DA, and it was also immediate reason for her to be tried as a felon for purchasing a firearm and lying on the form 4473. So that's why it's up there. And that's why we continue to push that, because we're continuing to show that she has no validity in the office she holds.
How likely do you think it's going to be that you're going to make headway with that one?
About as likely as Biden actually doing his own speeches.
Gotcha. All right. I'm hearing a lot of encouraging things from you. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing a lot of discouraging things from mm-hmm. you, which is unusual for my guests, because my guests either go one way or the other, and you're bringing hope, mm-hmm. and I like that. But then there's also this despair at the same time, and anybody who's a gun person has kind of felt that over the years, where we get a victory, but then we get a loss. What if you would just leave us with some solid encouragement?
Sure.
What would you say would be the most encouraging thing we need to hear tonight?
Well, I think there's three things. The first one is never give up. I do not believe in giving up. I believe that first, as Christians, we're called, as long as we're on here, to be a testament to God's will and God's love. Secondly, there is nothing wrong with owning firearms. That is, I agree with you, it's biblically consistent. And so realize that and take strength in that, because our Lord's bigger than any of the things we face here. And with that in mind, then you got to open your mouths and you have to talk to other people, because the silent majority is going to get itself killed if it doesn't do otherwise. It can no longer be silent. It's got to be vocal. Now, a lot of people are like, well, how can you, of all people, possibly preach hope because you fight this all the time, which I do. And what I tell people is, back when I went and joined the Air Force, I got this option to leave California, where my family's from. I was the bad kid when I joined the Air Force because I come out of a Navy Marine Corps family. So, and Part of my family was actually at Tongue's Tavern when the Marine Corps started, so believe me, when I joined the Air Force, it was not a good day in the family. But when I was back there in Texas, I made the second mistake with my family. I became a Texan because Texas pays the military's taxes, both state and federally. So I could have two checks, a California check or a Texas check. I was young, I took the Texas check. And at that time, we had people like Ann Richards in charge of Texas, and it was very anti-Second Amendment. And people forget that. Texas was not a friend of the Second Amendment in the 80s and even into the 90s. And then there was an incident where a guy went into a restaurant, shot it up. It was a glass front restaurant. And there was a young lady who became the poster child for the Second Amendment because she had a concealed carry permit. And she said, but the restaurant made her keep her gun in her car. And she goes, my car was right there, and I watched my mom and dad be killed. And I know that I couldn't save everybody in the restaurant, but I had my gun. I could have. Rick Perry, who was just our Secretary, I think, of Energy, but prior to that was the governor of Texas, was a Democrat. A lot of people don't know that. And Rick Perry and several of the Democrats switched parties and fought and made Texas into the Second Amendment state. And it only took them about 18 months to do that. So can things turn around? Yes, because Texas was as bad as California is right now. But what it took was the people getting collectively upset and working together. Us sitting at home, just talking to our friends, or you and me having dinner and saying, isn't this wrong? Yeah, it's wrong. Yeah, that's really wrong. And that's it? That does nothing. It doesn't move the ball. So I always ask people questions when they come to complain to me. I go, and unfortunately, 9 out of 10 will say this to me. I'll say, did you vote? No. Okay, then why are you complaining? Because if you're not engaged, you got what you asked for. After that, I'm like, have you put your money where your mouth is? Even $35 to pay someone like us to go do the work for you. No. Did you buy a video game? Yeah. Did you do this? Yeah. Okay, none of that moves the ball for you. So give up something. I realize we all have budgets, but we're not asking for that much money to go do this fight. And then the last thing is to look to the success. Don't allow the other side. The other side loves to pick out like, hey, we did this to you. What they don't talk about is of the 62 bills, they only have 3 that are still alive. We defeated all the rest this year. Think about that. But what they will highlight is those 3 bills, and here's what's bad. If those get signed by the governor, you all highlight them too. You're all like, Rick, you guys, you don't do your job. These got passed. Well, here's the news flash. Every bill that they have gone through, we've litigated. We don't stop fighting just because the governor signs something. We keep fighting. We have right now 14 cases waiting for the Supreme Court to take it. And any one of those are going to be a game changer. And what those Supreme Court cases we're looking for is the Heller victory and the McDonald victories that really put the Second Amendment up under Justice Scalia. What happened is all our circuit courts have went to what is called scrutiny. And it's a big legal term, and I could be here for another hour talking about. But here's how I usually tell most people to think about scrutiny. If I say this is a bottle of water, can we all agree to that? So if I put anything else in it, is it water? Okay, that would be called strict scrutiny, okay? What you see is what you get. That's what we want out of the court. But now if, say, Pastor Tim put, I don't know, Kool-Aid, lemonade powder in it, could some of you argue, well, Rick, it's kind of sort of water and kind of sort of lemonade because it was water before you put the stuff in.
My wife would argue that because she doesn't drink water.
Right.
So she says there's water in it.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be like a variable type of scrutiny. It's like your personal opinion. And so when you do that with the Constitution, you can make anything say anything. So all of our cases are designed to force the court into defining scrutiny and making it, because then we can open up everything. So that's why, people come, are you guys fighting the roster? Yes, we have a case that's already went through the Ninth Circuit. It's sitting at the Supreme Court. Are you fighting a magazine ban? Well, any of you that have been around should know that's what gave you Freedom Week, and that's known as the Duncan v. Becerra case. Are you guys fighting the ammunition thing? Yes, that's it. After Kim Rhodey, who is the Olympic champion, also sits on our board. And yes, that one's sitting up there. I mean, every aspect of this, from definitions of assault weapons, and probably the one that we fought really hard and we've won on, and right now it's a good point to finish on a positive note. Our state assembly actually had a bill, got to Newsom, and we were able to stop it. But this is what the bill said. So my wife and I have lots of pistols, but I'll just say it. My wife and I both have Springfield XDs in our master bedroom. Some of you would be like, why did you choose? Let's not get on why I chose that. I chose it because she loves that firearm. It's not the one I carry all the time. But I also chose it because tactically speaking, if one of us got in a pinch in a firefight, magazines could go back and forth. It wouldn't be like, oh, well, babe, catch the Glock in midair. That works in the movies, not so good in a firefight. So what the state of California said was if my wife used my gun because she happened to be on my side of the bed when something bad happened and she shot somebody that invaded our house, she's good. I go to jail. Did y'all catch that? She's good. She's the one who pulled the trigger. She's the one who killed the bad guy. Yay! I go to jail because I didn't have control of my firearm. Now I want you to think about how stupid that is. How many times when you pick up a firearm do you ever read the serial number on it?
I don't think I ever have, ever.
Imagine doing that when the bad thing's happening, like magnifying glass, flashlight, not a tactically good place to be. That's what they wanted to pass, and that's what they tried to get passed, and we were able to stop it. Because you should not have to be put at that disadvantage. And so that's one of the examples of how draconian and horrible they're trying to be, but we've got that stopped. We have an injunction, so they can't do anything for a period of time. And I think they'll give up and go after something else because they always do.
All right. Well, you've given us so much to think about. I'm hoping that you can just hang out for a little bit. I'm sure many people got lots of questions. They want to get to talk to you. But Rick, I want to thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for
and
having me.
Thank you, very much. Appreciate all the work that you do. You guys are not going to want to miss next week. We got Seth Gruber coming out. We're going to talk about the pro-life issues. There's a lot of them. If you haven't heard him before, you're in for a treat. He really is. He's one of those guys that's got a lot of passion for what he does. You got a lot of passion for what you do. You guys aren't going to want to miss Seth Gruber next week. But that is all our time for tonight. I want to thank you all for coming out and look forward to seeing you all next week on Our Watch. God bless you. Well, hey, I really do hope that our guest today and our time together was a blessing to you. I want to ask, if it was, would you please share this video out with your friends on social media? Also, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to us so that way you can be updated every time we have a new episode of Our Watch. Again, blessing to have you with us, and we hope that you have a blessed time being effective for the kingdom in the culture that we live in.